Welcome to our December AOD Partnership Meeting. This meeting we're going to be focusing on dangers in a bottle, being medication abuse, both prescription and over-the-counter medications. As we go along today, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to toss them out there. I do want to point out that we do record all of our meetings to be put on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to record or use this at a later date, or if you'd like to see any of our past meetings, we've been recording since 2012. So there's a lot of meetings, a lot of good material, a lot of great experts that have been here to present on different topics. And with it being every other month, you can imagine there's some good reference materials there. So a couple updates as far as AOD board. We have had a successful recruitment, but there's a potential that we may have an additional at-large seat coming available by the end of the year. So if there is, it'll go out through our weekly update, our e-newsletter, which is part of the reason why I have you guys sign up with your emails, so then we can make sure that we get you signed up for that list. So if you do have any interest in being part of the AOD Partnership Board, the AOD Partnership is its own nonprofit, is a 501c3. My role through the health department is to support that group, to support the board of directors, as well as to help with these different learning activities that you guys are here today. So that recruitment potentially may be expanded again, and the new board members will be coming out in our weekly update. Other things, the AOD board has been going through some strategic planning to be able to be very concise on what their role is in the community. Essentially, what is their lane? What are the things they're going to continue to build and support? What are the priorities for the next year, 2 years, 3 years? So that information will be coming out in some sort of one-page summary document for you. So if you are interested in learning more about that or learning more about that process, I'd be happy to share that with you. But just know that a lot of what we've been doing all along will remain. It's really just looking at how do we focus what it is that AOD Partnership does and where their niche is. One thing to point out is that we are going to change our meeting schedule in 2020. Instead of doing every other month, we're actually going to change it to quarterly to help save on resources. In doing so, though, we're actually going to be extending the time to 2 hours to allow for adequate time for any sort of updates, any sort of discussion, but then also those educational opportunities. So right now I'm looking at February, May, August, and November. So 2 of the dates that you already have on your calendar should be fine if you have it as a repeating appointment. We are going to most likely continue to do it here unless there is some conflict somewhere within NTC campus. It's kind of a convenient place for folks, depending on where they're coming from, to just jump off the highway and then stop at Fleet Farm after they're done here. I'm pretty sure that's what we all do. Okay, I know I do. So that's just some of the pieces just to give you an idea of what's to come. If you do have any ideas on what you'd like to see in those meetings as far as education goes, we're definitely always receptive on the evaluation forms, which you hopefully all have. There's an opportunity to write what you'd like to see at a future meeting. It's really our privilege and pleasure to be able to share that information and share this information with you. As far as any partner updates, I realized I forgot to add our announcements to a slideshow. So we just all get the PDF, which is on the back of your agenda as well. So you do have all these in front of you. Just a reminder again that we do have our YouTube channel. Feel free to share those videos with others. I don't know if Amanda, if you had anything else that you'd like to share from United Way, but there is 2 resources that are available. The Give and Get Help Guide had been updated and available to the community, as well as the Wisconsin Addiction Recovery Helpline. So anywhere in the state, people can dial 211 to get the help that they need or their loved ones need. So looking at Amanda, she says no. We're going to continue. We're going to continue on. I kind of put her on the spot. One thing is that there is some staffing changes that are going to be taking place at United Way. So if people do want to get their United Way Get Connected email, you can sign up at their website at unitedwaymc.org. Am I right? I believe. You can contact Marathon County United Way to get kind of in the know. I know one of the bigger pieces, if you ever work with Mygier, who headed up the 211 and the Housing and Homelessness Coalition, she did take a new position at North Central. So there's a new person in that staff role, Ben Lee, and then also Sue Hapt, who's been there forever doing marketing. She's actually going to be retiring. So there'll be some changes in faces there. For anybody that's interested and has a desire to help kids do the Shop with the Cop program, Marathon County Sheriff's Office and local police departments are working to collect donations in order to go and take people to do that. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I just encourage you to reach out to the Sheriff's Department and let them know. The Ben is Back movie we will be showing. That's one of the smaller sheets out there. On December 10th, so that'd be next Tuesday. We're going to have the doors open at 5:15. We're going to have a magnificent dinner spread. Actually, it's going to be like a taco bar, but a little bit for everybody. And then we're going to start this movie screening at 6, and after that we'll have a discussion for anybody that'd like to stick around afterwards. I myself have not seen the movie yet. Everybody I've talked to said bring the Kleenex. It's incredibly emotional and just a fantastic movie. So that is my disclosure to you. But I do not have first-hand knowledge. We hope you can make it. It is a free event, so bring your friends. If you do have anybody under the age of 18, we just ask that they come with a parent because it is an R-rated movie based on the nature of some of the pieces that are in it. In the updates, you probably have seen, or hopefully you saw, that there's a number of things that come out through the Great Lakes Prevention Technology Transfer Center, which is this green logo over here on the right. There are it's a regional, multi-state prevention effort. They put on a lot of trainings. A majority of them, if not all, are free. We try to put as many as we can out in the updates as we go forward, but there is one that's going to be coming up specific to vaping. It's a hugely hot topic, so if you're interested in that, you can actually go to their website, the pttcnetwork.org, and find all of their trainings there. With that, is there any other partner updates? Okay. We're ahead of schedule. Fantastic. So as I said, for those of you that don't know me, how rude, I'm Melissa Moore. I'm the prevention specialist for Marathon County, so my job is to really get out, meet people, to be able to offer up opportunities such as this to the community to learn more about the issues impacting us. So today we're going to be talking about medication abuse in Marathon County. Going to try to kind of set the stage a little bit. So if some of this stuff is a little bit basic knowledge, hopefully you're still gathering something new from what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the trends in medication abuse, not only prescription drug abuse, commonly abused medications, but then also I have a wonderful student with UW Pharmacy School that's interning. Is that the correct term? Interning with Aspirus Hospital Pharmacy. So she's going to come up here and she's going to talk about prescription drug abuse as well, because it's over-the-counter medication abuse, because that's one thing that sometimes we forget about. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our latest installment of the community assessment on medication abuse and just a little bit of what you can do. So like I said, a lot of supplemental materials, including our previous assessment summary, 2017. I just got this data in the last 2 weeks, so we don't have a formal report yet, but that report will be coming out soon for if you have some interest in that. So today's goal, again, looking to establish some common understanding of the different terms that you maybe see throughout the presentation, the commonly abused over-the-counter prescriptions that I already mentioned, and just ending with what you can do. So what is medication abuse? There's a lot of people, there's a lot of things that people maybe go to. They maybe imagine in their mind somebody that's stealing pills from their grandma, or there's someone that's breaking into cars and taking pill bottles out of purses. There's a lot that goes into medication abuse. But before we get into that, I'm just going to define kind of what prescription drugs are. Prescribed by a doctor, they're bought at a pharmacy, they're prescribed for and intended to be used by one person. Those are probably the most basic of definitions, and then it goes into a little bit more. With this being from the FDA side, of course, the FDA did talk about a little bit as well. So you can always go to the FDA to get more, but that's really what you're looking at is it's prescribed by a doctor, it's managed by that doctor, it's bought at a pharmacy, so these could be online, mail order, and so on, but it's someone that is registered as a pharmacy and that it's prescribed just for you. Over the counters, you do not need that doctor's prescription. It's usually bought off the shelf. A couple different over-the-counter medications are behind the counter at the pharmacy, and we're going to talk about why they are placed behind the counter in that way. But these are medications that anybody in reality can go buy, and except for a handful, they're not age restricted as well. So over the counters could be everything from Tylenol to Miralax. So when you look at medication abuse, like I said, it's taking pills from others, it's using more than recommended, it's maybe altering a prescription to get more pills or a different type of pill. That's not as common anymore with the electronic transfer of prescriptions, but that was definitely something that plays into it. And then the last part is using them not as intended, crushing them to snort them. What we really saw when the beginning of the opiate epidemic in 2010 was when they restructured OxyContin. Very powerful painkiller. They changed it from the consistency that could be crushed to look like this powder form into the consistency of a Skittle. So I'm guessing we've all had Skittles at some point, or Spree maybe, perhaps. Something that's going to be crushable but not necessarily grindable. But one of the things, we are in Wisconsin, one of the things I think that we do forget about is when we talk about medication abuse, mixing medications with alcohol, for example, is also another form of medication abuse. When we look at, we've got experts here from the Aging Disability Resource Center. When we look at our aging population, for example, one of the main common causes of falls is the combination of medications and the adverse effects they have when you mix them with alcohol. So it is one thing. When it says may cause drowsiness, do not mix with alcohol, take those things seriously. But that's kind of just some of the basics of medication abuse. As we go along, you'll see some of the different sources at the bottom or different image sources at the bottom. If you do have any questions, this presentation is uploaded already to the website, so you can go back to it at a later date. So why do we abuse medications, or why do we abuse prescriptions? To feel good, to feel that high, to be able to relieve that tension. Some people, it's kind of like having the drink at the end of the day. There's some people that look to the pill forms to have that at the end of the day, to reduce appetite, to increase alertness. You can see the whole list here. Some of the times it could just be curiosity to see that how you're going to feel if you use it. For somebody that's looking to abuse medications, it really doesn't matter necessarily what you have. You may just try whatever's available. I actually knew a girl, I just saw her the other day, which is fantastic. I haven't seen her in probably 15 years. And I always tell her story, and it was amazing just to see her. But she said she took 5 Coumadin from her grandpa just to see what it would feel like. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Coumadin is a very, very, I don't want to say dangerous. It's a blood thinner that could potentially cause risk to your health. And to take 5, I can't imagine how her blood was at that point, but it really does thin out the blood. So there could be definitely some danger there. So, it really does depend on the person, on why they're using. There's a lot of reasons. That last bullet point is one that gets a lot of news, where people use medications like Ritalin or Adderall to help increase their performance in college, for example, to be able to stay up longer to study more. So there is really a lot of different reasons. Just like addiction, it's person specific. Why we get into it, what leads us down that path really does depend on the individual. So when you look at how it looks like in the community, prescription drug abuse doesn't necessarily mean somebody took my pills. There's other things that may go into it. Somebody may be stealing your belongings to pawn them. Somebody may be taking, making those bad decisions while they're high, and you maybe don't realize why they're high. They may be unusually energetic. If somebody's on a stimulant, for example, they may be just completely revved up and talking a mile a minute. Or you may be talking to somebody that took a higher amount or having adverse effect to one of the opiates and talking as if they're drunk. But you're like, they don't smell drunk. I don't understand what's going on. So there's really a lot of ways that this can look. There's a lot of fear for individuals that have or do take prescription opiates, for example, on a long-term basis, because they don't want to be perceived as somebody that's using to abuse. But when you look at the community, requesting refills early is one of the indicators of somebody that's potentially using or abusing those medications. Or even just simply having pills that are not your own, or having pills in a bottle that don't have a label. And I'm not talking about, my mom, bless her, has a little aspirin bottle that has 6 different colors of either ibuprofen or Aleve or Tylenol. She knows what they all are, but I think that we all kind of have that story of what that unmarked pill bottle may look like. But it is something that, as we know, or as you see things, the internet is a great tool for some things. If you find a pill you don't know what it is, obviously don't take it. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. So again, prescription drug abuse can happen at any age. It is common with teens and young adults, and it has a lot more to do with curiosity, risk-taking behaviors with your brains not fully not fully being developed, as well as just availability. When we think about drugs in the home that are easily accessible to folks, prescription drugs and over-the-counter medications are really the ones that are right there. So when it comes to that part, as well as the developing brain, when our brain develops until we're 25, the earlier we start rewiring it with these different medications, the harder it is for us to necessarily make good decisions in the future, and our brain will continue to crave that. I think one of the final things, and I know I didn't include it in this presentation, is just the overabundance of ads that you see on TV as well can definitely contribute to this. If you think back to the evening news 10 years ago, you saw more beer ads than anything. Now you're seeing a prescription drug ad for 6 different types of medications over the span of 15 minutes. It's one of the things where when I looked at the amounts, millions of dollars is spent promoting different medications to the community. So when we look at easily accessible or gateway substances, I know a lot of people don't like the term gateway. I look at it as what's in our face, what are the things that are readily available, and prescriptions and over-the-counter meds are definitely right there. So as far as trends go, what's safe and what's not safe, I think what contributes to our culture of prescription drug abuse is this perception that they're safe because a doctor prescribes them. They're readily available and there's a pill for everything. Absolutely big pieces of the different puzzles. When we look at the 3 most commonly abused drug classes, and this is prescription drugs, and again, we'll get into over-the-counter here in just a few minutes, we really look at it in these 3 different categories. Starting with narcotics or prescription opiates, these are things that are going to be based from the opium plant, either the actual opium plant or synthetic opium. So some of the popular common names, Oxycontin, hydrocodone, oxycodone, fentanyl, methadone, morphine, these are all different pain relief pills that when used as directed, when used under the guidance of your doctor, can be very effective. They've also been used for things like suppressing coughs. If you ever had codeine cough syrup, for example, they've been used to cure diarrhea, put people to sleep. So there's a number of different reasons. Each one of these slides includes different slang terms, includes different effects on the body, and then the different signs of overdose. And all these do come from the Drugs of Abuse resource at the bottom. It is the 2017 version is the most current version, but they usually come out with the 2019 version will be coming out in early 2020. But when you look at signs of overdose, when somebody's on a narcotic, they're more likely to stop breathing first, and then their heart will stop then after. That depressed breathing is one of the main indicators. If somebody is overdosed, and again, overdose doesn't necessarily mean death, but if somebody's unresponsive, if somebody's using these at a higher amount or having an adverse effect, they're going to have they look like they're falling asleep and they can't keep their head up. So it's called on the nod. So, you're going to see very similar symptoms of both use and overdose when you look at prescription opiates as you would with heroin. They work on the same receptors of the brain. They give this overwhelming piece of well-being. I've seen videos and talked to individuals that are in recovery that talked about it's kind of like that feeling of love, like just washes over you. You get this really warm feeling. So it is definitely something that is very alluring. Some of that's on long-term pain management, though, just to point out, is that a person on long-term pain management, when they cease using those opiates, they may go through physical withdrawal. That does not mean that they have an addiction to opiates. They have a physical dependence to them. When you have an addiction to a substance, you're seeing all the other maladaptive behaviors. Socially, your physical health, your emotional health, your economic health. There's a lot of things that go into addiction that don't necessarily reflect back if somebody is physically dependent on narcotics. The CNS depressants are central nervous system depressants. These are ones that are typically used to treat anxiety and help people sleep. You can see some of the common names. You've probably heard of some of these before. These are the ones where when we talk about drugs that people can die from in withdrawal, benzodiazepines that are in this classification is one of the drugs. Does anybody know what the other one is? Alcohol. So when you look at it, there's some people that combine the two as well, which is definitely a fatal can be a fatal mistake. But when you look at benzodiazepines or their previous version of barbiturates, this is something that has transitioned over time. This is something that they've changed how they're prescribed, where they used to be short term and people were grinding them and abusing them. Now they do the slow release. There's a variety of different ways that they're trying to avoid people, really abusing these medications. But it is something that, we do have to recognize, because one thing that I've learned is that people don't necessarily abuse one type of medication. They will abuse multiple medications, and they may have different feels depending on what their needs are. So that's just, you see a lot of different things here. These again can be very dangerous when combined with alcohol or other depressants. So for stimulants, these are your uppers. These are the things that are going to get you up and going. It's like hitting the gas when you're in neutral. It is something you're just revved up completely. These are the medications that are used for weight loss or ADHD or ADD, depending on which diagnosis you may have. You can kind of see some of the examples here as far as, the different slang terms. You may have heard these before and maybe not realize that we were just having a discussion about, the effectiveness of slang for different uses of substances. I would recommend highly, if you're not familiar with slang, or if you hear people talking about, you see a text and you're like, what the heck does that mean? Using Urban Dictionary or Urban Thesaurus, both of those are really good resources to kind of get an idea of what it is that people are talking about. But the prescription stimulants, these are the ones that make your heart race, and people suffer seizures, people suffer heart attacks. So it's not necessarily with the depressants or the opiates that you start slowing down your breathing first. This is something that's very, very taxing on your heart. So very briefly, legal doesn't mean safe. So we talk about prescription drugs. These are, over-the-counter medications. Yeah, I mix them up. Typically, you're talking about cold and cough medications, pain relievers, nasal decongestants, motion sickness pills. If you've ever been on those before and you mix those with alcohol, you could have had an adverse experience. Caffeine pills, caffeine powder. There's a variety of different caffeine products out there. Laxatives, diet pills, herbal and supplemental products that are available, and more of these things, like the herbal and supplementals, are unregulated. So you really don't actually know what you're going to get, but when you mix things like melatonin, for example, that is intended to relax you with something like alcohol, you could have an adverse experience and not even realize what harm you may be putting yourself into. So there's a potential here as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tori. She's going to talk specifically about over-the-counters that are commonly abused and try to help us raise awareness on that.
Hi everybody. As Melissa said, I'm a pharmacy student and I'm currently doing a rotation at the Aspirus Wausau Hospital. But I'm originally from the central Wisconsin area and I go to school at UW-Madison. And if you have any questions at all, you can feel free to interrupt me here. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the OTC products that are commonly abused. So the first one we'll talk about is pseudoephedrine or Sudafed. And then we'll talk about dextromethorphan, and these are typically used for patients with coughs or colds. And it's estimated that about 3.1 million people between the ages of 12 and 25 have used these OTC products to get high. And then I'll also talk a little bit about loperamide, which is a newer drug that's been more recently abused. It hasn't been around as long as far as being abused as these other two medications. In between 2011 and 2014, there was a 71% increase in the number of reports to the U.S. Poison Control Centers for abuse of loperamide. So first we'll talk about Sudafed, and this is a controlled substance. It's a Schedule 5 substance, which means that it has an abuse potential that's lower than some of the other controlled substances that you might think of, like Vicodin or oxycodone, but it does have a medical use. And it is available over the counter, but the Combat Methamphetamine Act of 2005 made it so that this product was only available behind the counter in pharmacies. So in order to get it, you would have to ask the pharmacist for it. A lot of times it's locked up. And the reason for this is because its use is intended for nasal congestion, but a lot of times on the streets it's used as a precursor for methamphetamine. So it's one of the ingredients that they use to make this. So that's kind of the reason that it is available over the counter, because we want patients to be able to use it because it does have a medical purpose, but because of its abuse potential for making meth, it's kept behind the counter. So also because of this, patients are limited in the amounts that they can purchase. So each month they're limited to 3.6 grams, or they're limited to 3.6 grams per day to purchase, or a maximum of 9 grams per month for each patient. So they can't just go buy as much of it as they want. And this information is all recorded. The pharmacies or whoever is dispensing it is required to get a photo ID of the person who's picking it up and record all this information as far as when they picked it up, where they picked it up, how much they picked up, so that this can kind of be monitored. So these restrictions can be kept track of. So how this works is that it causes vasoconstriction in the respiratory mucosa. So it basically shrinks swollen vessels in your sinuses to kind of release some of the pressure that people may experience. So its usual dose is 60 milligrams every 4 to 6 hours as needed, or if patients are using the extended release formulation, which releases the drug over a longer period of time instead of all at once, they can use either 120 milligrams every 12 hours or 240 milligrams every 24 hours. And the maximum recommended dose is 240 milligrams per day. The side effects, when given at the usual recommended doses, they still can happen for this medication, though they aren't quite as prevalent as they are at higher doses. The main side effects are cardiovascular and CNS stimulation. So a lot of times patients will have an increase in their blood pressure and their heart rate, and they may also experience palpitations. And then as far as the CNS stimulation goes, a lot of times they'll be restless or anxious, have difficulty sleeping, or might have tremors or fear. And then in the case of an overdose, this is often, it often causes excessive CNS stimulation and then a resulting CNS depression. They may have cardiovascular collapse, shock, or coma. They may also experience seizures due to this or difficulty breathing. But Sudafed is unlikely on its own to cause patients to have withdrawal symptoms from using it long term. So then we'll go to dextromethorphan. Common brand names for this are Delsym or Robitussin, or most products that have DM in the name of it often contain the dextromethorphan. And this one can be particularly problemsome for patients who are abusing it because it's found in many over-the-counter products and combination products. So a lot of times when patients are using higher than recommended doses of this in combination products, they're also getting a lot of other drugs that they may not be intending to use. So the street names for this, there are more than this, but these are just some of the common ones. It's robotripping or Skittles, and that's a lot of times where they mix this medication with soda or something sweet. It's also called Dex or Triple C, and this is usually used to suppress non-productive dry coughs, but patients often abuse it for its euphoric effects as well as the hallucinations that they might be able to experience. And this drug works in the brain. Its structure is similar to that of codeine, but it is not an opioid. It doesn't have any effect on pain or your breathing, but it basically just decreases the cough threshold and it suppresses the cough reflex. So the usual dose of dextromethorphan is 15 to 20 milligrams 3 to 4 times per day, and when used at these low doses that are recommended, patients often don't experience side effects, but some of them that they might experience include dizziness, drowsiness, nervousness, restlessness, stomach upset or pain, nausea, or vomiting. But unfortunately, when people are abusing this, they use much higher doses, and there are 4 different plateaus of the abuse and what patients might experience. So the first plateau occurs at dose ranges from 100 to 200 milligrams, and at this point, patients will have feelings of stimulation. And for the second plateau, from 200 to 400 milligrams per dose, patients might start experiencing visual hallucinations and the euphoric feelings. And then for the third plateau, which happens at doses from 300 to 600 milligrams, patients will continue to have these hallucinations and euphoric effects, but they'll also start having significant perceptual distortions. And then for the fourth plateau, which is for doses greater than 600 milligrams, patients will have extreme sedation. They'll continue to have those hallucinations, but then they'll also start having out-of-body experiences. And because of these different plateaus, the DEA, which kind of regulates drugs and controlled substances, has this on their list of drugs of concern that they kind of want to watch out for, that they identified that this is something that can be abused. Okay, so then for the effects on the mind, it affects both the body and the mind, but for the mind it can cause confusion, inappropriate laughter, agitation, paranoia, hallucination, sensory changes, which may include the feeling of floating or alterations in hearing and touch. And then patients may also experience severe psychological dependence when they're using this for long periods of time. And then as far as effects on the body, they may be overly excitable, they may be lethargic, they may not have the coordination that they usually would, they might have slurred speech or sweating. And then also it can elevate the blood pressure and cause involuntary movements of the eyeballs. And like Melissa was kind of saying before, a lot of patients who are abusing one drug, most people aren't necessarily abusing just one drug. They oftentimes are abusing multiple drugs at a time, so they have an increased risk of experiencing any of these effects if they are using multiple drugs at a time, including alcohol. And then there are also some people who have different enzymes in their body that cause them to not metabolize or clear the drug as well. And when this is the case, the drug can kind of build up in their body, and they're also at a higher risk of experiencing some of these. So then a lot of times when people present with an overdose of dextromethorphan, they're extremely sedated, they have slowed or shallowed breathing, and they might have a heart attack. And oftentimes the treatment of the overdose is naloxone can sometimes help with that, but it's also recommended that people get behavioral therapies to kind of get over this abuse. One thing to note is that death is possible with the overdose of this medication, but a lot of times death associated with the abuse of dextromethorphan isn't necessarily due to the overdose. A lot of times it's due to some of these changes in the mind that I kind of talked about earlier. A lot of times the patients will have impulsive behavior or poor judgment, which causes them to die. For example, there was a 14-year-old boy in Colorado. I'm not sure how long ago it was, but he died when he was trying to cross the street because he got hit by two cars while he was taking high doses of this, and I think that was just because his depth perception was kind of off and he had a hard time kind of realizing what speed the cars were actually going. So then I'll move on to loperamide, and the brand name for this is Imodium. It doesn't really have many street names like some of these other drugs, maybe in part because it's a more newly abused medication, but it's sometimes called the poor man's methadone. The reason for this is because it's usually used to treat diarrhea, but a lot of times it's abused by patients who want the euphoric feelings that are associated with opioids, and it's also used to kind of help if patients are experiencing withdrawal from opioids. They'll try to use this instead. So this medication is an opioid agonist. And the opioid receptors are found in your brain, but there are also some found in your gut. And this works by slowing down. It acts in the opioid receptors in your gut, and it kind of slows down how fast everything moves through your GI tract so that your body can reabsorb the water and electrolytes that you would usually have with the diarrhea. So it kind of just slows everything down there. And it's not really absorbed. It mostly works in your GI tract. So that's the reason it doesn't have the same effects in your brain at these low doses as other opioids might have. And there are also these pumps called PGP pumps in your brain that kind of prevent the loperamide from getting into your brain. Anything that would go there would be pumped out at these lower doses. So then the usual dose of loperamide, it's a lot of times comes in a 2 milligram tablet or capsule. So the usual dose is 4 milligrams, and then for every loose stool a patient would have, they would take 2 milligrams. And when it's used over the counter, the maximum daily dose is recommended at 8 milligrams per day. But when people can get a prescription for this too, and then if that's the case, the maximum recommended daily dose is 16 milligrams per day. And I think this is just because like the provider is aware that they're taking it and they can kind of monitor them more closely, and patients are provided with more education. So at these low doses, kind of like dextromethorphan, at the low doses, there aren't a lot of side effects. The most common would be dizziness and constipation, which the constipation makes sense because it's used for treating diarrhea. But they may also experience like abdominal pain or dry mouth or fatigue. But then when patients abuse it, they're using much higher doses. So like I said before, for a prescription of this, the maximum daily dose would be recommended to be 16 milligrams per day. So that would be 8 tablets or capsules, but when people are abusing this, they're often using 50 to 400 of these tablets each day to receive the desired effect. So that's a pretty big increase. So then when patients are using it at these higher doses, they'll get those euphoric feelings. They'll experience drowsiness and constipation. They'll have decreased breathing or shallow breathing. And then the main concerns with this is the cardiac and CNS toxicity associated with it. They aren't entirely sure of the mechanism, but a lot of times patients who take this many of these pills will have the cardiac toxicity, which may be a rapid heart rate or an irregular heart rhythm that can be pretty fatal. This medication has a black box warning, which is kind of an alert to providers of a very serious side effect for a particular irregular heart rhythm that can be caused by this. And it can lead to sudden cardiac death for patients. So because this medication acts on the opioid receptor, you can use naloxone to kind of try to help with some of these adverse effects at these high doses. But otherwise, if patients present to the ER with this, they're usually using supportive measures. And unlike some of the drugs we talked about before, loperamide can have withdrawal symptoms, which are very similar to the withdrawal symptoms of other opioids. So they might have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, anxiety, irritability, depression, abdominal cramps, excessive sweating, or muscle aches and pains. And experiencing these symptoms can kind of make it very difficult for patients to stop using it if they are abusing it, and it can be life-threatening too if they experience some of these symptoms, if they would all of a sudden just stop using the medication. So then just in general, for any type of abuse, these are some signs of addiction to look out for. If patients are taking more medication than what's needed or prescribed, if they need to take more medication than they had to previously to get the same effects, if they're spending a lot of time thinking about the drug, whether or not it's how to get more, when to use it next, and whatnot, they might fake symptoms to get prescriptions written for them. They might have sudden changes in their physical appearance, hygiene, or behavior, and they may appear to be intoxicated but don't have the smell of alcohol. So just kind of a summary is just because medication is available over the counter doesn't necessarily mean it's safe. And a lot of people, sorry I keep saying patients, but a lot of people are turning towards these OTC products because they are readily available. Besides Sudafed, there aren't really regulations or controls on how much of these drugs patients can pick up. So it's kind of something to watch out for.
When we talk about the amount of Sudafed that you can get on a federal level per month, it's about 2 to 3 boxes a month. So if you're the person that goes and buys your Sudafed for your household, keep that in mind if you go there and you try to check out and they're like, well, you're already over your limit, especially in cold and flu season when Sudafed works for a number of people. One of the changes in regulations when Sudafed was changed in the early 2000s, that was about the time when you would hear about these meth labs being all over in the woods, right? Because people could get those big amounts. But what's happening now is with the Sudafed that's available, it's not being purchased really here. It's really hard to get. They've actually changed legislation, so it's electronic record everywhere. For a while there, people would know if it was written into a binder and entered later. So now it is automatically put into the electronic registry, so that's one of the changes with that. But when that was changed, that really did help reduce meth production. But in Mexico, for example, you can get barrels of pseudoephedrine to be making the different drugs. So it is something that we have made steps here, but that doesn't mean all the countries have. Many of these over-the-counter medications that were mentioned can be bought online. So if somebody goes to Amazon, they can buy, for example, a 200 count of Imodium, well, generic Imodium, loperamide, 2 milligram pills for $15. In talking with someone that works actually at one of our local pharmacies, she said that there's a person that comes in every day, buys boxes and boxes and boxes of Imodium. And there's nothing that they necessarily can do about that. It's unregulated at this point. Like was mentioned, it is something that's kind of got the star next to it. One of the changes with dexamethorphan, though, in the state, I think it was spring of 2018, they did change it so anybody under the age of 18 has to have a prescription to get dexamethorphan containing medications now. That was a change that I don't know very many states that have put that into play yet, but that was one of the changes that has try to help reduce the medication abuse. One of the other brand names, Corticidin, HCP, HBP, high blood pressure, is another type of over-the-counter brand name that does include dexamethorphan amongst other different substances. That is another one that's readily available. I went to Shopko to get some flowers one year, and there was probably 20 boxes with all the push packs pushed out in one of the carts out in the parking lot. So it is something that, again, until it's regulated, people can really access that. If you do want to get a little bit more, if you want to know more about kind of the drug culture around these, definitely two other additional websites to look at is Erowid, EROWID. It is a place where you can go find more than you probably want around drug culture, as well as Reddit. You'll see a lot of Reddit conversations about the different substances. So if you want to know more about what people are expressing or feeling when they use the different substances that we've talked about today, you can definitely go there. One of the things to point out is that we have had 2 deaths in the last 12 months that included loperamide. So it is something that is being it is being abused here. It's not necessarily showing up on a blood test. If you go to your doctor to have a UA, for example, it is something that is definitely abused. One of the ones that we haven't talked about, and you probably can explain it better than I can, is gabapentin, which is an anticonvulsant, anti-seizure, chronic pain relief type of medication, is actually one of the other ones that I would anticipate there's going to be some sort of legislative action, hopefully, within the next couple years, because that is another medication. Now, that one is a prescription medication that has been and is being abused in communities across the state and across the nation. Similar to other stimulants, that one, relaxation, calmness, and euphoria are really the feeling that people get from that. Do you have anything to add on gabapentin? Did I hit?
I know that one's abused a lot in the prison system just because that's something that's more readily available to them too. And some of them can come to depend on that.
So withdrawals are possible with gabapentin as well? Okay. So that's another one that we didn't include specifically, but that is definitely something that we do need to bring up. So I think that was all my little notes. So when we talk about kind of how bad is it, one of the things that we've been able to do here in Marathon County is to really have this discussion early. In 2010 was when I first got hired on, so I'm looking at about 10 years. The community was Drug Free Communities grant funded. It is a federal grant, and I won't go into the long story of it, but in reality, the in the end, we have to focus on 2 drugs of abuse. And when I came in at 2010, alcohol, underage drinking was definitely one of them because it's all around youth use. And the other one they had identified was prescription drug abuse. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Like, I never really thought about it myself. But thinking back now, I just, turned 40 this year. It's a whole lot different. It's a whole different game now for this generation of how many different medications are out there. I already mentioned the ads, the sheer promotion of the use of medications has been there. So we didn't know how big this problem was. This would be right at the beginning of the heroin epidemic as well. Because when we first had our first conversation in February of 2011 around medication abuse, they said, well, this is fine, but we need to talk about heroin. And I'm like, what do you mean we need to talk about heroin? Because I didn't make the connection at that point, and now we can't turn on the news without making that connection. So we really had no clue what the problem was at that point. It was the same year that we started the drop box program in the community. We actually started with 3 medication drop boxes in 2010 as well. We just didn't really know how to even ask the question. So what we did is we actually wanted to find out, what is the prevalence of abuse? What is the perception of risk? What is the perception of availability? Where do we think people are getting these medications to abuse from? And then the last part is we just wanted to see how many people even knew that we had drop boxes available. Did they use them? So we had this focus. We knew this is what we wanted to do, but we still didn't have any assessment tool to work from. So we looked at the different research that is out there, questions that have been vetted on many levels for multiple years, and really tried to build this assessment, which to my knowledge is still the only kind of assessment like this out there. Communities across the state and across the country have also grabbed on to using this assessment. This picture is actually from our 2017. Like I said, I have those summary reports up here if you want to see 2010, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2017, and then we just wrapped up our 2019 survey. So it is definitely one of a kind. We've been able to engage a number of different people in both implementing the survey, but then also working on things coming out of it, and been able to identify some of those local trends around the issue. Some of the example questions, and I haven't posted the whole report for 2019, but the 2017 report's still there. You can actually see all the questions. So if you work with other communities or if you want to share this, you can see the whole list of questions. There is, hold on. I want to say it was right around 31 questions. But we asked them, what do they see as the top health issues? What do they see, how available are medications in the community? How easy is it for people to get them from family members or friends? Or how easy is it to get it from physicians, for example? Just what that perception is. Do people understand even what abuse is? We also asked how many people are prescribed medications and how many people have expired medications in their home. How many people know of the Dropbox location? So we have a whole variety of pieces, and we really also wanted to know if people even knew that the AOD Partnership exists. We figured, why not? This is a good opportunity. So this survey in their first year in 2011 was actually a phone survey, but 2013, 15, 17, and 19 have all been mail surveys with very good responses, and I'll kind of talk about the success that we had with our last one. But before I get into the highlights from this latest version, I do need to put a shout out to Aspira's Health Foundation, who helped fund this assessment. We're very fortunate to have a partnership with them to be able to do this in our community. In previous years, we have had support also from Aspirus. They partnered with what was Ministry St. Clair's at the time. We've also used grant funding in the past through our Drug Free Communities grant, as well as Security Health Plan. So we've had some really good buy-in. But our latest rendition, again, is through the Aspirus Health Foundation. And you can go to their website and see what other type of things that they fund there. So overall, our response rate, for those of you that aren't familiar with doing any sort of assessment surveys, you shoot for 20%. That is what you hope for. So we actually sent out, I believe it was 1,900 surveys to the metro area, and you can see up here, that's the green spot. The reason that we picked metro versus non-metro, historically, our grant, the drug-free grant, focused on the metro area, so it was actually 4 zip codes, so 54401, 54403, 54476, and 54474. We focused in that area. So that's what we've been collecting over the last 5 installments. 2 years ago, we actually accidentally sent some out to the rest of Marathon County, which was actually our fortune because we've been able to have a non-metro control group to be able to compare things to. So when we look at the number of surveys sent out, the number of surveys that came in, our response rate was 29% in the metro and 35% in the non-metro. That is amazing. When we shoot for 20%, just to give you an idea, like I said, we sent out, I want to say 1,900 in the metro area, and I think like 1,500 in the non-metro area. Of course, I can't find it. Oh no, there's 1,000 in the non-metro area. So it was a very good response. I mean, better than some of the other community assessments that I've seen. For being a voluntary survey, there's no incentive for people to do it. It just showed that a lot of people were concerned about this issue. As far as the assessment itself, they did get fewer than they'd hoped for the less than 45-year-olds. They did oversample them as well, but it's just the nature of the beast to get the responses. So, going forward, that's going to be another point of emphasis to increase those numbers. But we were able to weight the data to reflect that. And then what surprised me a little bit is that we actually didn't have the greatest turnout as well for the over 65. Our middle-aged folks really kind of fed into our sample. What we found was that when we look at the quality of life ratings, which is something that is measured and asked in a couple different community surveys, depending on how old you are, what your income was, what education level you had, what your employment status was, those are all things that really factored into how people's quality of life, how they felt their quality of life was. And the reality is that our quality of life here between the metro and non-metro is anywhere from 7.8 to 8.1. I mean, people out of 10, people feel like their quality of life here has been slightly improving. So there's some positive overall responses there. So when we look at the metro, again, residents versus non-metro, there was some really good comparisons there. So when we look at the large majority of the metro residents should rank their overall health as good or excellent. So when you're looking at over 90% of people, they really did feel that their health was in good shape. Non-metro actually reported overall less in this category, but it wasn't significant enough. Nearly 3 out of 4 residents currently take a prescription. And again, it's going to depend on a number of the different demographic factors that are listed above. So it really does kind of change how things work. So this would be taking a prescription either on an acute basis or on a chronic basis. And again, as we age, we can expect that that's going to be the fact going forward. Majority of residents do not report using medications in other than prescribed ways. We actually saw higher rates in the 2011 version when it was on the phone versus the mailed version. But again, it didn't come with a definition of what that looks like if we're using medications not as prescribed, if we're sharing our medications, if we're not taking them, if we're taking them for other reasons. It's a pretty small sample, but in looking at the data, what it linked back to again was education, and actually there was a racial disparity with this as well, and age. I didn't say age. So when we look at the ease of abuse, 3 out of 4 people still feel that they're coming from family members or friends that are looking to abuse. They're stealing them or they're getting them as a gift. This is pretty on par with national data. National data is anywhere from 67 to 72% of people feel that that's where they're getting it from. One of the things that's changed over the years, and not changed dramatically, is the line of people that perceive getting them from healthcare providers has kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. It's a very more of a subtle dip. So that's one thing that I think as we go forward that we're going to look at doing is engaging more of our healthcare providers in these discussions, just to make sure that, even if people's responses was unknown, we just want to make sure that people understand kind of what's expected of them when or what they should expect, when they go to the doctor's office. Continuing with that, the level of concern of prescription drug misuse has continued to grow over time. We actually saw a huge jump in the level of concern even over illicit drug use between 2011 and 2013. There's a lot of impacts, I think, from the media that really jumped that up. But one of the things I was kind of surprised is that while there is a higher level of concern now with prescription drug abuse, we actually also saw a higher level of unknown as well, or unclear. So that's one thing that I think people have a vague awareness that this is an issue, but don't necessarily know how bad it is, but they've heard enough about it that they're concerned. But it's not as high as you would expect with all the news that has happened between 2017's version and now around opiates. I would have expected it to be higher, but it actually did not seem to be as impacted. It's still on that steady incline. Less residents are holding on to their unused or unwanted medications, which is great. Last version, we actually saw an increase of people that were holding on to expired medications. I was like, no, man. We do have a record number of people that know where the drop boxes are and use them. One of the trends that they recognized in the study is that we have less, while we see the increase of people knowing where the drop boxes are and that's their main way to dispose, we actually saw a decrease in people that are using undesirable ways like flushing them or throwing them down the toilet. Now, the reason we want people to use our drop boxes is, it's free, it's safe for the environment, it doesn't end up in our groundwater, it protects our public safety for people potentially stealing them from you, and then it helps protect our public health too for children or pets, for example, getting them when they're tossed in the trash or left out. So we just really want people to keep those medications up and away. And we do recognize that there's more effort needed so people know kind of who AOD Partnership is and what they're doing in the community around these issues. But what's great is we have over 200 individuals and organizations that are connected to the AOD Partnership, which kind of serves as a wheel around all of our partners working to address the issues of substance use, including medication abuse. So conclusions, we're going to continue to assess, identify, and address the beliefs and behaviors that are contributing to medication abuse in our community. We want to build upon our existing efforts around awareness and engaging more people in those prevention efforts. We want to fully expand our drop box locations and promote, through our community partners. We have all but one police department in our county that has a drop box location now. So we are at 10. So hopefully within the next few months, we will have our 11th and final medication drop box location. And I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the other great new initiatives coming, or that we've started as well. But as I already said, we want to make sure that we engage our prescribers in the conversations and re-engage our pharmacies. Our pharmacies, 100% of pharmacies promote the drop box locations, but we haven't necessarily done anything intentional to engage them. So the report to the community, like I said, will be hopefully coming soon to you. So if anybody wants to take a peek at the assessment report, you're more than welcome, and it will be posted, and when it's available, I will make sure I send that out through the update. So what's happening as far as how do we address medication abuse? One of the things that's been directed down over the last couple years is prescribing recommendations. So with that, the federal level, what they've seen is that with the different regulations, they've actually, or with the practices that have been promoted, they've seen some changes, and you can see some of these things illustrated here. Where, before, when you look at the number of medications that are available in the community, they're writing out less for prescriptions. They're writing out less amounts for prescriptions. And this is, again, specific to opiates in this slide. But that's really where the regulations have been coming in. That's where the focus has been. But when you look at illicit drugs in our community, and we can't talk just about opiates, we do have to talk about methamphetamine as well. Methamphetamine is definitely the number one illicit besides marijuana that's been impacting us. And of course, alcohols are number one overall. So one of the things that Wisconsin did is that they actually passed legislation to change the Wisconsin guidelines, which actually are perceived as more strict as far as prescribing opiates goes. And if anybody in the room has more knowledge on that, I would be more than happy to have you explain it a little bit better than I can. But with those recommendations, like I said, there was some concern with people on long-term pain management. What are they going to do if that's what they rely on to be able to get through their day that aren't showing signs of abuse? So there has been some discussions, but to my knowledge, they haven't changed any of those guidelines yet. One of the other things that's been put into place, it was on a state-by-state basis, and I know that there's been a concerted effort on a federal level to really implement the prescription drug monitoring program. So you can see some of the people that feed into it, and I'm going to ask Tori to come back up and share some of the information that she put together around the PDMP, or Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. But you can see who all has access to it. You know, you're looking at insurance, you're looking at licensure, you're looking at health departments, our medical examiner's office has access to it. But, you know, the main people that feed into it or get information out really are the healthcare providers and pharmacy.
Okay, so Wisconsin has a PDMP program, and Wisconsin's is actually considered to be one of the better ones, I think, overall in the country. And the laws and regulations for our PDMP are all kind of laid out in this Wisconsin statute. And currently 49 out of the 50 states in the United States have a prescription drug monitoring program. I believe Missouri is the only one right now who doesn't. So this is a pretty common thing throughout the country, and it has shown some benefit. So what the PDMP is it's an online system that was kind of created to help fight against the opioid epidemic that's going on, particularly with the prescription drugs, the controlled substances. And it collects information on all these controlled substances that are prescribed and, well, not necessarily prescribed, but that are dispensed to patients. And it's for all of the Schedule 2 through 5 prescription drugs. And information is reviewed, kind of as Melissa was talking about before, by a lot of people, but it has a lot of utility for prescribers and pharmacists in particular, from my experience. So the information that's reported to our PDMP includes the person who's picking up the prescription medication, the date, time, and location of where it was picked up, who prescribed the medication, all the information about the medication, including the strength, the medication name, how many the patient picked up, how long this is supposed to last them, the prescription number, and if there were any refills. And then there's also information about the patient, which is just used to identify the patient, like the address or phone number or date of birth. And then the DEA number of the pharmacy and the prescriber are also recorded. And then this information is presented on the dashboard on the website, and it helps kind of the clinicians see how the patients have been using the medications, who they have been getting the medications from, to kind of raise any red flags, like, oh, this patient is getting medications from multiple different prescribers, like maybe we should kind of see what's going on here. It also shows a map of the state of Wisconsin that shows where the patient's address is, as well as locations where they've picked up some of these medications. So I know I talked to one pharmacist who said she knew somebody who kind of watched somebody move up 41 getting prescriptions for opioids at different pharmacies. So they started down in like Milwaukee, and they just saw them move up the map to get these different controlled substances. So that's kind of something that raised a red flag for that pharmacist. And then it also displays the morphine milligram equivalents that the patient is estimated to have. And this kind of indicates it takes like all of the different opioids and converts them to how many milligrams of morphine this patient would be having, and adds it all together just to kind of see how much drug the patient is actually using or has in their possession at any given one time. And it's just kind of an estimate because you can't necessarily tell for sure how much the patient is using. And this is good for seeing another way of seeing like if a patient may be abusing the medications, but it's also kind of a safety measure too. I know like in the pharmacy when we look at this, we can kind of see like, oh, they have a high level for their morphine milligram equivalent, so maybe we should talk to the patient and kind of provide them with some more education on potential consequences, or see if they're interested in getting a naloxone in case of an overdose, and kind of just, it's a way to provide more education for the patients as well. So then practitioners are required to check the PDMP before issuing a prescription to a patient, just to see if they are getting it from other sources, prevent them from getting another prescription and potential diversion. And then those who are dispensing the medications are supposed to be looking at this too. I know in every pharmacy I've been at, we've always checked the PDMP before we've dispensed it to the patient, and there have been several instances where we've said that it was too early for the patient to receive their medication, so they'd have to come back at a later date. So pharmacies or dispensers have until the end of the next business day to submit all the data they've collected for controlled substances that they've dispensed for that day. And this also includes submitting a zero report if the pharmacy hasn't dispensed any controlled substances. The PDMP also wants to be made aware of that as well. So it is good, and it has helped kind of prevent diversion of controlled substances, but the PDMP does have some limitations. So not all medications are reported to the PDMP. So if patients are part of a federally funded treatment program where they're receiving something like methadone or buprenorphine, they may not, or they aren't required to report this information to the PDMP. So that's not available. If medications are directly administered to a patient, like in the inpatient setting, this also doesn't have to be recorded in the PDMP. And then patients or medications distributed by veterinary clinics aren't reported in here either. Another limitation is that it's not necessarily updated in real time. Like I said, pharmacies have till the end of the following business day to enter this information. So it takes a while sometimes for this information to actually be uploaded to the site. And then also practitioners do not have to check the PDMP before prescribing a short course of opioids or something like that. So if they're prescribing something that's estimated to last less than or equal to 3 days, they don't have to check the PDMP before prescribing. So this kind of limits the amount of controlled substances that are allowed to get out there, even though they don't have to check this. So theoretically, patients could go to multiple places, I guess, to get short day supplies of these medications without anybody really. When they would pick up the prescriptions, it would be entered in the PDMP, but that also, like I said, could take some time to upload. So what questions do you guys have about the PDMP? Anything?
So when you say controlled substances, currently it's just opioids, correct?
It's
Prescription painkillers, or are they putting like benzodiazepines?
It's every controlled substance, C2 through C5. So yeah, it is like benzodiazepines and
So codeine cough syrup
stimulants.
would also be listed in there.
Yes, yep.
So the level she's talking about is the DEA scheduling. So if you're not familiar, a Schedule 1 would be high propensity for addiction with no medicinal values. So drugs like cocaine, for example. Marijuana is still federally a Schedule 1. Heroin is a Schedule 1. You look at Schedule 2s would be Oxycontin. Methamphetamine is actually a Schedule 2 because there's an FDA medication that Dexedrine looks like meth chemically, but definitely not made like meth. And then Schedule 3, hydrocodone, some of the more popular.
I think hydrocodone is a 2, but like some of the medications that they contain like lower doses would be Schedule 3.
So it just kind of, they just kind of tear down. So that's one thing that does always change. When you look at medications distributed by vet clinics, if you've never been to the vet, you get the medications right at the vet. It's not like you go to a pharmacy to get your pet meds, and you could abuse pet meds just like you do regular medications. So that is a concern, and I think that's an area of engagement. Also, when you look at dental and eye doctors, both of those also are prescribers of prescription painkillers. They also are not required at this point, I don't think, to register or to check in with the PDMP. But when they get distributed through a pharmacy, that's when there's going to be a check. They actually had to pass some regulations because prior to a couple years ago, doctors had like 7 days to enter in the data, which didn't really help the issue to try to reduce that doctor shopping or the highway travels. So now they actually passed some legislation and extended it or plan to extend it, so they too have to put it in within 24 hours. So some steps have been made, but that doesn't necessarily stop people that are looking to abuse to continue to abuse. When you look at pain as a fifth vital sign, it's hard to measure pain like you could measure other pieces of your vitals. So that is one of the things. So any other questions? Yes, sir. Is that a question? Oh, you're just putting your hand up. Good, we got that on camera.
Sorry.
Yep, my bad. So some of the other things that are available out there is some of the public awareness efforts. So if you do have different audiences, there's some good information out there.
One of the ones that I know Safe Kids uses quite often is the put your meds up and away, that kind of up and away message to keep them out of the hands of people that maybe accidentally will take them or ingest them. There's some good preventative measures, like the parents, the Stop Medication Abuse, there's information there. The Medicine Abuse Project has some other information. Generation RX, I think, feels more like it's directed towards grandparents. It just kind of has a different feel. That's through Cardinal Health. Lock Your Meds is another nationally recognized initiative or material. You might have seen some of their ads that say, like, she got her eyes from her mom and her smile from her dad, but she got her pills from her grandma. There's pictures of a teenager. Dose Reality is the Wisconsin-based awareness initiative. DoseReality.wi.gov. I think we got all the different things here, the different websites. You can go to any of these. I don't know. This is a Brad Schimmel, the previous Attorney General campaign. Call hasn't said he's going to stop using it. He hasn't also said he's going to put more into it, so I'm not for sure how often that'll be updated or if it's going to continue, but there is still, again, some great resources, some great talking points or information that can be shared, pretty readily available at all those. As far as our drop boxes in our county, the yeses, the things that we can take, the things that we don't take, over-the-counter prescription drugs, pet meds is included specifically on here, but definitely pet meds. Prescription creams and lotions can be included. Just leave anything that could leak in its original container. Like, don't squeeze it out into a baggie. Essentially, for anything that's pills, we want them to put into a zip-tight bag or use one of our paper bags over there. Fold it up, somehow seal it so they don't spill all over. But there's an option there with those. You don't have to push out pill packs. That would be pretty tedious. One of the things that is newer is that we are able to accept inhalers now. That's one thing that has changed. As far as the medication drop boxes, things like chemo meds, needles and syringes, we don't want your shampoos and lotions. When I say clean out your medicine cabinet, I literally don't mean your old Band-Aids. But we do sometimes get those in our drop boxes. It's like just grab everything and go. Things like vitamins and supplements really are something that can be disposed of. But if you have any questions, you can go to marathoncountysolidwaste.org. They actually have a what do you do with it page. So any sort of something you're planning on throwing away, from batteries to prescriptions to what have you, some random stuff on there. But you can play around on their website and check it out. One of the things that we've been able to do, like I said, over the years is really expand that program. This is the older piece of material. So in addition to those sites, we have one at Mosinee and Stratford. So we're just missing Athens. So we do have some good material out there. As we're actually going to be doing a update, because instead of listing all the different locations, we may just end up having, contact your local law enforcement, just because we can keep adding, but we don't necessarily need to. Another great opportunity that we've been very fortunate to be able to put in is sharps disposal. That was one thing that when we look at what's available, Marathon County Solid Waste also has links to websites to, like the DNR, for example, who are registered sharps disposal places. A lot of the places you do have to pay for to dispose, per poundage, or depending on who you may be able to dispose of them for free. But now we have this drop box here. This is the Wausau Police Department lobby. You can dispose of your sharps in there. You can dispose. We're actually going to be looking at adding 3 additional sites within the next 6 months. Hopefully within the next 3 months. It's just whenever the funding says yes, you can now spend. So there's going to be 3 rural areas that are going to be expanded to, in Edgar, Marathon, and Spencer. So you'll have plenty of opportunity. One of the things we're getting some clarification on is what do we do with our old EpiPens that have the needle right in it. It's all preloaded and everything. We're looking at how we dispose of those safely as well, because it sounds like they don't necessarily want those in there, but don't worry about it right now. Anything that has something sharp that can poke somebody at the landfill or poke somebody accidentally in the trash, please make sure that you're taking to these locations. Take advantage of the free opportunity. So some more suggested resources. These were all kind of tickered across the bottom. That's really all I have. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, comments, concerns. Just a reminder to take extra material up here. There's some handouts on over-the-counter medications of abuse, the CNS depressants, the stimulants, the opiates. make sure, we hope to see you at our event next week. And I think that's all I got. Any questions? Well, for the good of the order, enjoy your 11 minutes of extra time in your day. Feel free to hang around. We've got the space. And make sure if you didn't sign in, you sign in. And any MTC students that need signatures, don't worry. I know you're here. We'll get you taken care of. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.